Do you find yourself taking things personally? Do you get your feelings hurt easily? Have you been told you're too sensitive? Do you feel like you need a thicker skin? Well, actually, the solution is very different. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So grateful to have you with me. If you have any questions that you'd like to send in to Rohini's Relationship Tips, please email them to me. The email's below in the description. And if you'd like to spend time together live, check out the Rewilders membership. Or if you just like some weekly inspiration, sign up for our newsletter. Love to hear from you. Today I'm going to be answering a question about how to not take things personally. And this is something I absolutely struggled with in my life. I was definitely told by Angus that I was too sensitive and that I needed to not take things personally. And I have absolutely experienced a significant shift in that area. But it didn't come from getting a thicker skin. It didn't come from becoming less sensitive in the way that I thought I needed to become less sensitive. But I thought I would start out by just getting clear about what I mean regarding taking things personally. The more traditional definition that I have right here is when we're taking something personally, it means that we get offended or upset by something someone said. And it's pointing to that we get upset by the things other people say or do because we think that the remarks are behavior about us when they're not really about us. So for example, someone might say to us, "Oh, they're just angry in general. Don't take that personally." So there might be anger coming our way, and we feel hurt by that or feel upset by that, but actually it's not directed at us personally. Now I want to take it a step further, and I would be more in alignment with the definition that Don Miguel Ruiz talks about in his book, The Four Agreements. And it's the second agreement, which is don't take anything personally. So don't take anything personally. So even if someone is intentionally saying something directly to you that is meant to personally impact you, if it's something unkind, something mean, I'm saying, and I would agree with Don Miguel Ruiz, not to take that personally either. And here's a quote from his book. "Even when a situation seems so personal, even if others insult you directly, it has nothing to do with you. What they say, what they do, and the opinions they are giving are according to the agreements they have in their own minds. Their point of view comes from all the programming they received during domestication." That domestication is all of the conditioning that we take on board as we make meaning up in life. From a very young age to now as adults, we are constantly making meaning up. And so this definition, to me, is the most freeing, because what it's pointing to is that what other people say and do is a reflection of their state of mind. It's not a reflection of us. Now that doesn't mean that we can't make mistakes and do things that are unkind and that we're not responsible for those actions and the consequences of those actions. But I really want to make a distinction between our experience and where it comes from. So our experience comes from within us. It comes from the thinking that we are identifying with in our own mind. So if someone is saying something unkind or mean to me, and then I feel hurt by that, it's not coming directly from what they're saying to me. It's coming from the thinking that I have in my own mind about what they're saying to me, and I'm identifying with those own beliefs within my own consciousness. And that's where the suffering's coming from. So that's why getting a thicker skin isn't the answer to not taking things personally, because it's not about protecting ourselves from what somebody else is saying to us and we need to get a armor or shield up. That's not the problem. The problem is in our own mind. The problem is that we are identifying with limiting beliefs and misunderstandings in our own consciousness that come from our domestication. That internal domestication is what we're up against. So it doesn't matter how thick our skin is, we're still living with those own beliefs in our own consciousness. So how do we help ourselves to not take things so personally, which is the question of this week? Well, first of all, I would say the place to start is first with how we relate to ourselves when we do take things personally. Once we've taken something personally, we're in the emotional feeling of hurt and upset. And how are we going to relate to ourselves when we're in that space? Are we going to beat ourselves up? Are we going to judge ourselves because we're too fragile and we shouldn't get hurt? Or are we going to be kind with ourselves and recognize that we just happen to be caught up in some old conditioning that looks really real to us and feels painful, and we're feeling the hurt and pain of that? Whenever we're hurting, whenever we're suffering, kindness, compassion, and love is always what's needed. To start there, because we can't intellectually make ourselves not take something personally. Happens too fast. I'm not saying that we can't get better over time and not taking things personally, but we have to start with where we're at. And so for myself, somebody who would be taking things personally a lot in my relationship with Angus, it started with me having more self-compassion for the fact that I would get caught up in my own thinking, in my own limiting beliefs. And could I relate to myself in a kinder way when I realized that was what was going on? And what was really helpful about that is that I stopped trying to solve the problem out there, right? I always thought, oh, if Angus was different, if he was more kind, if he was less this, more that, trying to fix him, then I would have a better experience. But really, it wasn't needed for him to change. What was needed was for me to get more stable within myself. And so when I started to realize that the problem wasn't actually what Angus was saying and doing, it was what was happening, where my own mind was going and my own internal identifications were going. When I started to look in that direction and realized that it wasn't about changing that, trying to change my experience, it was starting with being with myself in the pain and suffering in a new way that included love and compassion for myself. And what happened is that I became more internally regulated on the emotional level. I started to get more perspective on all of those limiting beliefs and misunderstandings so that I would take them less seriously, so that they wouldn't hijack me as easily. And that as I became more emotionally stable within myself, lo and behold, Angus would behave in the same way, but I wouldn't take it personally. I would have perspective because I was within a stable space within myself. I would have perspective on what was really going on with him, and I would see, oh, he's just in a low mood. Oh, he's suffering. Oh, Angus isn't really himself today. And as soon as I would see that his behavior or what he was saying was a reflection of his state of mind, I wasn't taking it personally. This wasn't a technique I was using. It wasn't something that I was trying to do. It was just a natural experience of seeing what was really going on and just not taking it personally. Now, we do this often with people that we're not perhaps that close to, or maybe with children. Like if I'm with a young child and they're having a temper tantrum and maybe they're even saying, I hate you, I'm most likely going to be able to recognize that they're tired, they're hungry, they're not themselves in that moment. I'm much less likely to take that personally than if perhaps Angus was saying, I hate you to me. I'm more likely to get internally destabilized, not because of him, but because of where I go to in my own mind if my husband was saying that to me. And I'm not saying Angus ever says that to me. What I want you to be able to see is how already, day to day, there are times where you really see what's going on with somebody else, and so you don't take their behavior or what they're saying personally. And I want you to notice that when you do take something personally in life, as we all do, there's no perfection in this, I want you to notice how you're doing and what's going on internally for you, rather than looking at them and blaming and pointing the finger. Look at what's going on within yourself. See what's needed within yourself. And the more you understand and see where your experience comes from, the easier it is to not identify with those misunderstandings in consciousness that cause us suffering. right? Remember, these are misunderstandings in our own consciousness that are causing us suffering. It's not coming from outside of ourselves. Now, the beautiful thing with how human beings work is that we help each other. We are designed to be in community. We are designed to be in connection. We are designed for love. There's actually a book, Born to Love. I believe that's the title. Because we're born to be in community and connection, we can help each other with our regulation experience. It's called co-regulation. So if one person is really upset and dysregulated and another person is really calm and settled, that person who's calm and settled, when they come into connection with the person who's really upset, that helps this person to regulate, and they find themselves coming to that settled place as well. Now, it can work the other way around too. Somebody can be in a really nice, calm, settled place, or feel like they're in that state of mind, and then somebody else comes in and they're dysregulated, and all of a sudden the pull is to get into that state of dysregulation. Now, all that is the state of the nervous system. Co-regulation is about the state of our nervous system, and the deeper we are in a state of peace and well-being, the more we're in that state of mind in a genuine, authentic way, the harder it will be for somebody else to pull us out of that. Doesn't mean it's going to be impossible. And it doesn't mean that they're intentionally doing it or they're actually doing anything to us with that. What happens is we're in a peaceful state of mind, somebody comes in, says something, does something, and then we get caught up in our own thinking at times, and then we come down to their emotional state because our nervous system is now dysregulated. So I want to point out it can go both ways. And so the best thing you can do for yourself in terms of not taking things personally is to take care of your own nervous system, to allow yourself to settle and to notice what the real cause is when you get unsettled, to understand that what you're up against is your own mind, your own misunderstandings and consciousness. And when you know what you're up against a busy mind, you're up against a dysregulated nervous system, then you know what the common sense thing to do is to take care of yourself. You know in those situations that the best thing you can do is take care of yourself in a way that settles your mind, in a way that settles your nervous system. There's no one way to do that. There's many ways to do that. And if you check in with yourself real time in the moment, you'll get your answer as to what is the best way to take care of yourself in that moment. That's all we need to do, is check in with ourselves and listen to what is the act of self-care in this moment when I'm feeling upset, when I'm feeling dysregulated. And that question will be answered by a common sense response. It won't be answered by all of the noise that's going on in the intellect that wants to maybe lash out or criticize ourselves and really get caught up. If you really ask yourself that question and listen for your common sense, you will hear practical feedback. You will get practical guidance. We all have common sense. We don't always listen to our common sense, at least I don't always listen to it, but I know it's there when I'm willing and ready to listen to it. And when I ask that question, there's something that gets delivered to me, moment to moment, real time. Can't plan ahead for it, but I know real time I'll be given the response. And so back to the question of this week is how to not take things personally. First of all, understand where the hurt is coming from. That when we take something personally, it's coming from the hurt within us because of the identification with the misunderstandings in our own consciousness. When we understand that, we know how to better take care of ourselves. The more we take care of ourselves and see where experience comes from, the easier it is for us to be less vulnerable to those misunderstandings in our own consciousness, and that allows us to be more emotionally stable. And as a result of being more emotionally stable, we have more perspective on what is going on with other people. And when they're not behaving well, when they're upset, or if they're being unkind to us, we're much more likely to be able to see that that's their state of mind and it's got nothing to do with us. And when we understand that and see that, it doesn't hurt. We don't take it personally. It's natural. Now, I want to be clear that this is an ongoing learning curve for myself, And there is no perfection with this. So I encourage you to be kind and gentle with yourself on the learning. And there's an example that comes to mind where I didn't even realize I was taking something personally until it occurred to me. So I'll share it with you in case it's helpful. A few years ago, Angus and I would go riding in the mornings on our bikes. We'd take our dog out. We did this until we realized that our dog didn't really like those bike rides in the morning, so we decided to walk him instead. But we would go out bike riding, we'd be with the dog, it'd be beautiful, we'd be on this lovely ride, and at that point in time, there was some challenges that we were experiencing with one of our daughters. And Angus on this bike ride would start talking about his concerns and his worries and his upset. And I would get defensive and I would start defending her. And I didn't realize that I was taking it personally. I was taking his upset personally, and I was getting defensive, and I wasn't able to listen to him. So those conversations weren't going very well. Well, at some point in these mornings on the bike ride, I realized that I was unstable emotionally when I was listening to Angus. I realized that I wasn't taking care of myself. And so what occurred to me to ask him was to say, Angus, if you're in the state of mind where you really want to talk about your concerns and your worries and your upset and your frustration regarding our daughter, would you be willing to check with me first to see if I'm able to hear you in that moment? So it was a simple request, and he was fine with that. And so that's what we would do. And what was interesting for me is that when he let me know that that was what he was needing to do, and I could check in with myself, I could notice, do I have the emotional bandwidth to listen to him and not take it personally and not get emotionally dysregulated, or am I not in that state of mind to be able to handle it? And I just needed to be honest with him. And I don't know if this happened, but even if I said yes, and then I noticed as we were going along that I wasn't able to do it, I could have said to him, Angus, I'm sorry, I misjudged myself. I'm not able to listen to you at this point in time. I don't have the bandwidth. Can we revisit this at another time? So that was an example of me being human, not always being in an emotionally regulated state, able to listen to my husband, who I love dearly, but still not always able to hear his upset, and being able to find a way to take care of myself and also be supportive to him in the way that I would want to be supportive to him and be kind and hold space for him. So we don't have to be perfect. We don't always need to be emotionally regulated. That is just not how we work as human beings. And we are probably going to get our feelings hurt and take things personally at times. That's also just part of the human experience. But we can be on the learning curve of seeing where experience comes from and understanding how to take care of ourselves when we get gripped by all of our misunderstandings, all of that thinking. We can take care of ourselves so that we stabilize more gracefully, and we get better and more masterful over time at leaving that thinking alone so that it really doesn't cause suffering in our lives. And we can enjoy more of that state of peace of mind and well-being by recognizing that all of that insecure thinking that we can have does not need to be identified with. All of that comes from perspective and understanding. We can't intellectually think our way into it. There isn't a technique to master it. There's simply just a deeper awareness and understanding within ourselves about how experience is created, that it always 100% of the time comes from within. That doesn't mean we condone everyone's behavior. Not everyone's behaving well, but our experience on an emotional level is a reflection of the thinking that we're having in that moment that we're identifying with. And that is really empowering to see it. It isn't even about getting perfect about the thinking that we identify with. It's just understanding how it works so that we can take good care of ourselves. So I hope this answers your question. Thank you so much for sending it in, and I'm sending you lots of love.